G'day everyone, I'm here with John Sargison and we're at the church, keeping our distance, as we should be. A couple of days ago John contacted me and said he had some thoughts he'd like to share around the challenges everyone's going to face around mental health and anxiety and isolation and those sorts of things based on his own experience. And I thought it was a great idea for John to come and share, and who knows, maybe we might have other people share in time as well. I'm going to ask John a couple of questions and you're going to listen in, and I think you'll really appreciate what John's going to share. So, John, thanks for your willingness to come and your idea to come and share with people. But this idea, the world is in a state of anxiety at the moment, and people are being isolated, and it's all new territory. And you've had some experience with mental health challenges. Do you want to just share a bit about that so people know a bit more of your story?
Well, a number of years ago, when I actually used to work in a field of work adjacent to mental health, I did a lot of counselling, and I got a degree in social sciences and human behaviour and stuff like that. So I worked in some different non-government organisations for a while, and then I actually experienced a breakdown, the old-fashioned nervous breakdown as people used to call it, and became very ill and still live with the sort of consequences of that, because it doesn't just go away. And also in the process, because we had suspected it was the case because other family members had been diagnosed as well. I discovered that I have high-functioning autism. So I have sort of various cognitive challenges and stuff like that, and might, behave a bit different than other people. And I actually do struggle with groups and social things like that. So I guess in some ways, like, being isolated for me is like, that's like, I don't mind it, because it's how I sort of live my life in some ways. Not that I deliberately avoid relationships with people. I love people, I love my family and stuff. I just find groups really difficult. So what I guess I was hoping that we could sort of make folks in the church, help them to be aware not only for their own health and well-being, but ways that they might be able to look out for others as well, or stay well enough so that they can be there for others. Because I've had to learn a lot of things, and even now with this, just the last few weeks, I've had to step back a bit, because I could and look at what was happening to me, because my anxiety levels were rising again with all this swirling around. And I know that because I got used to what it feels like in my body, sort of thing, as it were. And I think that's often these things can sneak up on us sometimes, as we're not fully aware of the fact that perhaps we're not thinking as clearly as we were previously, or we start to feel like a feeling here in our stomach, or a tightness in our throat. And usually the way we're made is that our brain causes physical feelings to happen inside us before we consciously think about, I'm feeling anxious, or I might panic, or something like that. It's a physical feeling before it's actually a conscious thought. So if we can become a bit more aware of that, and say, okay, I think I'm feeling this, and come and work on strategies, because we're in a very fortunate position as Christians, unlike all these people out there in the world, and we can see the panic happening in some more than others, like with all the crazy buying stuff and things like that, and maybe things that friends are saying to us. Even this morning I had a conversation over Messenger with a friend in the US, and he uses words like scary and stuff like that. And so as Christians, we kind of we need to work on our perspective. I found that I've had to kind of make sure I didn't absorb too much social media stuff, too much news stuff, and some of us are news junkies.
Yeah.
We just are.
Yeah.
But I'd sort of encourage you at this time to maybe have a bit of a closer look at that, and ask yourself whether some of whether that's healthy or not.
Yeah.
Because obviously we need to be perfectly attentive to anything official, and listen to that, and also listen to our friends and be there for them. But if you're someone who is always glued to the telly or this media, and you're going to get a lot of fearful messages, and they can put us out of whack as far as the kingdom perspective.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that God is in control and that He's sovereign and hasn't taken him by surprise. And so I was talking to this friend this morning, and some of the things I said that I've been thinking about that are important for my mental health is reduce that intake of sort of things that can just pump up those that fright and flight reflexes, those panicky things, and obviously as Christians we want to keep our focus on the Lord, not just for ourselves but so that we can be there for others.
So for me, even I found myself going, being overwhelmed by social news and stuff, and it's hard not to look at what's going on when it's so dramatic. And so I found myself over the last week getting up in the morning, and the temptation was to go to the phone and see what's happened in Italy and overnight, and what's happened. And so I actually made a conscious decision 3 or 4 days ago I'm going to actually go to my Bible first.
Cool.
Before my phone. So the last few days, I'm just going to just exactly what you're talking about. Even to just try and make sure I'm not overwhelmed by the headlines and the information and stuff. And when you're talking, it made me think of those things we've talked about in church before about set your mind on this and think about that. It's actually can be a conscious choice to set where your mind or guard where your mind goes.
And we're not talking about sticking your head in the sand.
No,
not at all. But it is, as Christians, we're called to have a different perspective. This morning, the scripture that, and I've been humming around in my mind for a while, but I'd actually, in the process of talking to this guy in America on Messenger, I actually looked up the scripture and thought, I've got to get what it is, But it's that scripture that says, Paul talking to the Philippians in chapter 4, verse 8, he says, "And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honourable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me, everything you heard from me and saw me doing. Then the God of peace will be with you." And
that's great. It's some of my favourite verses. So I didn't know you were going to share that. That's fantastic. So from your experience, even in the past of anxiety and mental health challenges, that's a strategy in a sense as a Christian person that
well, I have
adopted.
I have. I read the book like a lot of us do. I have my quiet time every day and read the Word and try and be God focused. And I have a little book that I've written like scriptures like that, promises that God's given me that it's good to review at times. And particularly, people might find, a lot of people probably already got things like that, or things that they need to come back to those and sort of centre themselves on God, so that they can be most useful to others around them, and as well as looking after themselves. Now, there's also like other very practical things you can do, like making sure you still get outside, even if it's in your backyard. Get some sunshine. To, if you can, get some exercise. It's only I've recently started to actually do that more consistently. Bought myself an exercise bike, and I just do 15 minutes every day, except for Sundays, and and it just helps. It just helps. It gets rid of some of that agitation, and I think it's just good for your brain. Those sort of physical things are good. Another really good thing, if you can, is to find activity, because what happens if if we start to enter a state of fear and panic and stuff, our ability to process starts to break down. Like our ability to plan, and our heads can actually become more like instead of like a precise, like shot at a target with a gun, it becomes like this scattergun effect, where our thoughts are, you find it very hard to pull them in.
So you can't think clearly.
Can't think clearly when fear, because what's happening is at the back of the brain, there's that part of the brain that releases like the adrenal hormones, things like that, and the fright and flight thing. And that can get really overly worked up, through things like this, and we start to these chemicals start to release in our brain, and they start to affect our impair us cognitively to be able to plan. And we need to be able to plan. We need to be able to think calmly.
So what do you do when you feel?
Okay, so some of the things. I mean, for a long time, my brain was in quite sort of damaged in terms of the chemical stuff. I mean, being autistic, that part of my brain is actually somewhat overdeveloped anyway, naturally from birth. But there are strategies you can do, like to calm yourself. That basically it's stuff like, and it's not Eastern mysticism or anything doolally like that. It's basically sitting quietly, calmly, concentrating on something that's more singularly focused. And that could be something like just take some time to focus on your breathing, or learning to become aware of the sensations in your body before they blow up into something, where you get in a bit panicked. You just like spot it and say, oh, okay, I noticed that. That's gonna, I'm not gonna let that take over. We're more, I think there's a book out there saying we're more than our brains. Because we are. Yeah, and we're more than our bodies. We're a holistic being, but there's more to us. So the other thing I do, I'm very fortunate in that I work as an artist of sorts, and I paint, and I miniature figurines for commissions for people overseas and in Australia, and collectors and things like that. So my job is very, very focused and detail focused. Now, very few people are going to have that hobby or interest, but there are other things that we can do that help us to calm and focus our mind. And it might be as simple as colouring in. And because it's just a matter of giving your brain some time to focus on something singular, rather than this shotgun effect of your brain racing in a million different directions, which actually hinders the planning process. So take some time in your day to do things that are focused and calming. It might be cross stitch, it might be colouring in, it might be a gigantic jigsaw puzzle you've had in the cupboard and never done. Who knows what it is? It might be some like tying flies for fly fishing. I don't know, but there are often things or interests that we have that cause us, and people will know what those might be in their own situation. It might be learning a new song on your instrument or something like that. We have a number of talented musicians, it might be something to do with that. What that helps us train our brain to focus. And in fact, that's part of what we're doing when we're praying. We're focusing, we're bringing our attention to the Lord. We're bringing, all that we are to Him, and focusing, trying to bring out as the scripture says, bringing every thought captive into obedience to Christ.
That's good.
So it's like, yes, we're doing that in our prayer, but try and make it a practice to do it in your daily life as well. And I think the principles of these things carry on, past the time of great stress like this, and they can just be generally sort of good for you. So what I do, I'm on, after my quiet time, while I'm having my breakfast, it's part of my work and just checking things. I'm on social media, so I'm trying to sort of be selective about what I look at, but I'm checking if I've got messages, chatting to people, making comments, da-da-da-da-da. But sometimes I can come away from that and I can feel the agitation here. I can feel it in here, or maybe a slight tightness in my throat, and I think, okay, so I'm a little bit edgy after that. So I go on, I start my work and I try and focus in on that, and I put something to listen in so that it's not just while I work. I listen to stories like on because there's a lot of free stuff you can get, dramas and things, history stuff, podcasts that aren't related to the current situation, but can just help you to focus.
Mm.
Focus on, I mean, reading might be a good focus for some people. In fact, interestingly, one of the things that I found helped me during my initial little recovery period was reading, going back to reading some stuff I hadn't read since I was a teenager, and reading Lord of the Rings, reading Tolkien,
Yeah, okay.
who was a Christian,
Yeah.
and had actually, some people think, oh, his works is just escapism, he's sticking your head in the sand, but actually that man went through enormous trauma. He lost his dad, and then he had just him and his mum went back to England, and not long after his mum died, and then he went and lived with a Roman Catholic priest who basically, was his father figure and looked after him. And then he made these mates at school, and he went into the First World War as a junior officer. Nearly all his mates got killed.
Wow.
And the Lord of the Rings and those writings actually sort of came out of this deep trauma experience of these and there's a number of guys writing after the First World War who wrote some really interesting things. Some of them were quite bitter and some of their fiction and things like that. But guys like Tolkien and CS Lewis, actually through their fantastic worlds and stuff, they're actually exploring a lot of really deep issues that can be hard to process like in a normal just sit down and think about it. But it works on your mind, because here are larger than life characters going through enormously difficult traumatic situations of grief and loss and war and sorrow, and it actually, I don't know how exactly it works, but it helps their trauma and their processing of trauma actually helped me to process. And so some of you might have some favourite books as well that
it's good. But that idea of focus, bring your mind back to focus.
Focus. Obviously, number one, focus on the Lord. We need him totally. Yeah. But there are other practical kind of things you can do.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Any other strategies or any other thoughts you might like to share with people? What about? I mean, I know you said you don't mind isolation, but that for some people that's going to be a real struggle. Yeah. So if people start essentially to feel down about that, any thoughts on? Is it the same sort of strategy?
I think in a lot of ways it is, because it's again, it's practical stuff. Like it's proven that getting enough vitamin D, sunshine and exercise is so beneficial to whether it's anxiety or depression. And being able to find ways, I suppose, to look outward and to help other people, that's going to help as well. I do suffer from depression as well, but it doesn't spring from the isolation thing. Yeah. But I guess it's all, for me, it's all often people on the autism spectrum, and there may be others in the church or kids who are. These things are what they call, it's an ugly term, but comorbid, that someone can be on the autism spectrum and have anxiety and depression and other cognitive issues together. So, a lot of the same principles apply to these sort of general things. Actually, interestingly, just came into my head then, and post-traumatic stress is a lot of these same ideas about how we help people in these situations. In the UK, for instance, there's a lot of work being done with veterans with post-traumatic stress, and people can get post-traumatic stress from all sorts of things. It could be from being an ambulance driver. It could be from some horrible experience they had in childhood. But these guys actually are doing things, they're building scale models, model cars, model tanks, model whatever, and it's actually helping them again with that focusing in, because their thoughts are very all over the place.
Going everywhere,
But they're focusing in, and it's the creative process as well, and it's good to find activities like learning a song or whatever it might be that are process-based, because I think, and people in certain fields of work find it difficult where they're forever doing things in their work, but they never see an end result, and that can get people down, you know. But to find activities maybe that you do as a hobby or something, you know, that have an end and a beginning. You know, you start with something, it might be pieces of wood, you might be in your shed and you think, I'm going to build a coffee table, you know, and you see that process through, and that is very satisfying. It's very good for our brains. And because not everyone gets to experience that in their daily life. I mean, there's a lot of jobs we can think of where they think they do all this work and they don't know.
Never
Ever see it.
Never see the completion.
Is it that? I imagine that's probably a challenge for pastors as well. That you sow and you just have to trust God with the results. Sometimes you see a result.
Yeah, true.
You know, and I used to know working with in social welfare and stuff like that. I know David Priddle would know as well. He's spent a lot of years in that field as well. Is that now and then you see a great result.
Yeah.
Someone comes back, their lives are changed. But often you're putting out,
Yeah,
and you
true.
don't really know where it's heading.
Yeah.
So that's why it's good to have things that we can do. You know, there are people in the church who have model railways. There are people in the church that make things with their hands. Is to do those process-based things to help have a sense of achievement. Those are good for dealing with depression and again the focus kind of thing.
Yeah, it's good.
Practical things.
Yeah, that's really good. I think what John shared is fantastic, actually, and I think John might be preaching when we get to the church. But I really appreciate it. I think everyone's going to really love what you shared. Really practical, but really God-honouring and God-focused. And common sense for all of us, whether we officially think that we have anxiety or not. These are uncertain times, and we are followers of Jesus, and we've talked about being people of faith, not fear. And here's some practical ways to do that when the fear does start to challenge our faith and that sort of thing. So really appreciate that, John. Is there any final thing you wanted to share? Or you don't have to, but
no, I just think be careful what you're sowing in.
Yeah.
Be wise about that. Learning to say, like you and I have talked about before, learning to say yes and no to people and suggestions. Sometimes we find it difficult to say no, and there are some things we need to say no to in order to, in the long term, better help others.
Yeah.
And I guess people will hopefully know what those are.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might get to a place where you've just heard just a little bit too much news about the latest dramas, and you feel you're starting to, and maybe you have to say, I can't talk about this right now, or I'm not able to talk about this right now.
Yeah.
Can we talk about something else?
Yeah, that's good.
And that's okay. That's a kind of a polite assertion, sort of without being, bossy or rude about it.
Yeah.
But you need to look out for yourself so that you can help others better.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just a self-centered kind of thing.
It's good. Thank you. All right, I might just pray, and we'll finish this thing, and you'll be able to see John on YouTube.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends.
You sound like a pro. All right, Lord, thanks for the chance to talk to John, and I just pray that you use what he shared to encourage people. Pray for anyone out there who's watching in our church and wider, who's feeling that sense of anxiety and those physical sensations in their body, and pray that it would cause all of us to turn to you in a greater, deeper way, and that this whole crazy time would drive us to you, Jesus, and that we would know your peace because we are people of your spirit, and we are people who trust in you. Thanks for the reality of the hope we have, that no matter what's going on, you're with us, you're in control, and I just pray a blessing on each person out there, that they'll be encouraged by this. And I thank you for John and his family again, and thank you for our church family and what it means to be family. So just commit ourselves to you in your name. Amen.
Amen.
That was good.
It's a wrap.